Coming on to race 2 on the Thursday of the Cheltenham Festival on Champ.ie's Early Birds preview show, and it's the Ryanair Chase, the 2 mile and 4 furlongs Grade 1 race. 5 key stats. The last 13 winners have raced at the festival previously. 10 of the last 12 have won a Grade 1. 12 of the last 13 were rated 161 or plus. 10 of the last 13 were course winners. I suppose that aligns with the first one. And the last 7 winners were French bred. 50 entries. It looks probably one of the strongest races at this stage of the Cheltenham Festival, Ronan Groome. Min sets a fair standard, and plenty of people are going to argue his value at 5 to 1.
Yeah, plenty of people might be right, because it's hard to pick holes in Min. He's a multiple Grade 1 winner. He's won this race last season. You know, I still think they have a yearning to win a champion chase with him, only that they have Ante-Post. But so if something happened to Ante-Post, maybe they might go for that race still. But then again, he's a 10-year-old now, and maybe this is just generally going to be his best trip. 5 to 1 is I think is a very fair price. I think especially now that Imperial Aura looked so good at the start of the season, but I think people can pick holes in his form now, and he seated rider last time, which was quite unlike him, given his jump in earlier in the season. But the way that Carlisle race has worked out hasn't really worked out great, and even his Ascot race there, with likes of Real Steel in there, hasn't really worked out well for Imperial Aura. Allaho we'll learn more about tomorrow as we're recording this. He's going to run tomorrow at Thurles. It'll be very interesting to see how he gets on at 2 miles 5 furlongs, given a lot of people's suspicion is that is his trip, and I don't think he just got home in the RSA last season. So interesting to see how he gets on. The horse I'm fascinated in, Barry, and I'd love to see him run here, is Kemboy. Very interested to see that Willie gave him an entry here. I think that this sort of race, the 2-5, and him utilising his pace up front could be perfect. Now, I don't know, as you know, with Willie Mullins, you're not sure what's going to run. He has Mellon in there as well as Min, obviously, and Allaho, we just mentioned. So, look, he's mob-handed for the race, but Kemboy really did interest me now. I have to say, at around 16 to 1, if he was definitely going for this race, given that how fast he went early on in the stages in the Leopardstown race, and still only just gave way late on to Absolute Hard. And when you go back to his runs, like back in the season that he did all his winning in, it was kind of fast ground that suited him. And maybe his most impressive win was when he beat Clanda's Oboe by 9 lengths around Aintree, kind of on a flat course. And the Leopardstown run when he went off in front, and that great ride from David Mullins was all about utilising his pace up front. I think he just runs a little bit keenly for 3 miles, especially the Gold Cup trip, 3 miles 2. I think coming back to 2-5, going off in front, using his pace might be the key to Kemboy. So he was the interesting one, bearing it, but with the kind of caveat that we're not sure if he's going to run with Willie Mullins, given his options for this race. But he'd definitely be the one that interests me going forward.
Quick show of betting without the non-runner no bet. 5 to 1 Min, Imperial Aura. 6 to 1 Allaho, of course, goes this week. Thurles season 8 to 1 Chansing Calvados. 9 to 1 Ante-Post is not going to run. He's priced at 10s. How are they even coming up with 10 to 1 and non-runner no bet for Ante-Post? And I hope in hell does he go for this. He should be 100 to 1. Mellon 10 to 1. Surname 14 to 1 chance. Kemboy, as Ronan said. Without the non-runner no bet is a 14 to 1 chance, if you want to agree with Ronan Groome. Mr. Fisher 14 to 1. Waiting patiently 14 to 1. Absolute Tard 16 to 1. Altior 16 to 1. It is 16 to 1. The rest of them. Davy. Mike, Imperial Aura, he ticks plenty of boxes. I know you did like him on our season preview show. The fall would have to be, I suppose, a strong negative, wouldn't it? I wouldn't like to be backing him now off a fall.
I think it's just one of those things that was a soft fall, really. It's not like he ended up on the ground. He just it was a question of losing his balance. I just think this might be a bit too tough for him, because, I mean, I'm looking at this race. Yeah, there's an awful lot of water to flow and an awful lot of bridges here. There's Thurles and also Acapella Bourgeois and Gorham Park on the Thursday of this week before we get to the Dublin Racing Festival. So this has got more question marks against it, in my eyes, than almost anything else. But one I do like, and I think might go well at a good price, is a British challenger here, Mr. Fisher. Nicky Henderson's always thought a lot of the horse. He won at Cheltenham last night. It was the Peterborough Chase, switched from Huntingdon. Ran badly in the Paddy Power Gold Cup, but A, lost a shoe, and B, the ground was not great. And a double figure price for a 7-year-old and one who's really going to be going to this or not going anywhere is, I think, a half decent. But it is a race certainly where I wouldn't be touching anything until we've got a much clearer idea of what is or what isn't going to turn up. I mean, let's look at it. You've got Defi de Soy in it at 20s. You've got Delta Work. They're all Group 1 winners, and there are huge prices here. A couple of 20-to-1 shots on, and Simply the Bets, who did nothing wrong last season at all, is in there at an even bigger price. So my view is, if I was the judge, if I was a court judge, I'd be calling for further evidence before I stuck my money anywhere, to be honest.
You mentioned Simply the Bets. I looked at this race last night before the entries come in for the Cotswolds Chase, and speaking to Gavin Sheehan on the podcast earlier this season, you know, he mentioned that St. Calvados was one that he thought could go up in trip, and he did speak quite highly about Simply the Bets, and that was, of course, before he disappointed. But St. Calvados ran a very, very eye-catching race in the King George. You know, he was travelling like the winner turning in. It looked like he was going to go and win. Was travelling absolutely all over Frodon, and it just looked like he didn't get home. And I'm a bit puzzled as to see why he's entered in the Cotswolds Chase this weekend. He's a 9-2 chance for that. You know, and if he was to go and win that, or, you know, they surely probably holds an entry in the Gold Cup. You'd have to think they'd roll the dice that way. So he was my selection for the race each way, and I was pretty sure he was going until I saw the entries for the Cotswolds Chase. And for me, he was an unlucky loser last year. He's only had 17 runs in his life. It's not that much when you consider some of his rivals in here. And, you know, he seems like he's been around a while. Ran in that famous Arkle where himself and Petit Mouchoir went hammer and tongs and set it up for footpad. That seems like quite a long time ago. But I thought he was an unlucky loser last year. And, you know, some people might argue he could have won the race, but for his mistake at the last. And he's banged there on ratings now. And I thought he looked a decent value at 9-to-1 each way. But I probably would be looking for him with the non-runner no bet now if I was having a play. So I thought he was probably the interesting one. I think 2.5 miles at Cheltenham probably is his trip. I was surprised he didn't go for something like the Ascot Chase with a view to Cheltenham based on what we saw. And he did shape like an on-stair in the King George. But anyway, he's the one that I'm interested in here. Grenadine was one also at 16-to-1 each way with the non-runner no bet. Look, I'd be very interested. I think I said to you, Davy, during the week, I'd be very interested if they went here. The fact that Politolog disappointed last weekend probably doesn't signal well, and Grenadine might potentially go for the champion chase, but I think he's crying out for a step up and trip. I think he has the ability to hit the frame over 2 miles and definitely over 2.5 and 16-to-1. I do think he's a graded horse, and I think he could be potentially good value each way at 16-to-1 with the non-runner no bet, because if he did go in here, he certainly would interest me. That's Grenadine. So that's my thoughts, but ultra competitive. What do we do with Altior and Defi de Sol? Do you think either of them will line up in here? And if so, could either of them surprise Mike?
I don't know what to make of Defi de Sol. I really don't. He is the ultimate head. If he were awarding a prize for the head-scratching horse of 2021, then he'd be an absolute landslide. Altior, we'll have to see. It may just be they'll go for it. But again, it could be a question of looking to see what else is in the race. But that's another reason why, at the moment, you'd be swerving it. But if you push me, that's why, because I know that Mr. Fisher will run. That's why I've gone down that route, because I'm trying as far as I can to stick a probable rather than a possible up.
Interesting. Mr. Fisher for Mike at a big price. Ken Boy for Ronan Groome, and I will take the chance of saying Calvados will come here. And I put him up at 9 to 1 each way. But I'd be looking for the non-runner no bet on him.